Welcome to Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime, where we uncover the hidden truths and shocking stories behind some of the most infamous cases. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the twisted secrets of one of Hollywood's most beloved couples, the Winklers. This explosive story will change everything you thought you knew about their marriage, from hidden affairs to family feuds. Stick with us as we reveal the dark side of fame, where nothing is quite what it seems. The Winklers. To the outside world, they were the epitome of a perfect Hollywood couple. He was a charismatic leading man, known for his charm, wit, and undeniable on-screen presence. She was an elegant actress with a career that spanned decades, admired not only for her beauty, but also for her intelligence and grace. Together, they were a force, gracing red carpets, appearing in interviews, and sharing a seemingly flawless, picture-perfect life that their fans adored. When they first met, it was nothing short of cinematic. Two rising stars, their paths destined to cross at a glitzy Hollywood gala. Sparks flew immediately, and their chemistry was undeniable. Soon, the public was enthralled by their love story, one that was carefully crafted and nurtured under the watchful eye of the media. At the height of their fame, they were a beacon of what every young couple aspired to be: successful, attractive, and perfectly in sync. Magazine covers, award shows, and philanthropic events painted a picture of two people who had it all, from the adoring fans to the incredible wealth, a sprawling mansion, and vacations in exotic locations. It seemed like nothing could tear them apart. But behind the shiny facade, cracks had begun to form, ones too subtle to be seen by the public eye at first. The pressures of living up to the public's expectations and maintaining an idealized version of their marriage weighed heavily on them. While their public appearances were flawless, their private lives were slowly becoming more complicated, more strained. He had a habit of staying out late, often seen in the company of other women at after-parties or high-society events. She, in turn, had become more reserved, her public appearances fewer as she focused on her career and tried to deal with the increasing tension at home. Friends whispered about their growing distance, but no one could ever have imagined that what seemed like a picture-perfect marriage was merely a well-crafted illusion, hiding the tumultuous storm brewing beneath the surface. It wasn't until much later that the cracks would truly begin to show. But by then, it was too late. The damage had been done, and their marriage, built on the shaky foundation of fame and perfection, would never be the same. As the years passed, whispers began to surface about the Winklers' once unshakable marriage. While the world watched them laugh and love under the spotlight, there was one secret that no one could have anticipated: infidelity. It started with subtle rumors, odd behavior from the husband, reports of late nights, and close encounters with unfamiliar women. But it wasn't until the tabloid photos surfaced that the public truly learned about the cracks in their carefully constructed world. He had been seen, on multiple occasions, leaving a hotel with a young actress, someone who, to the media's shock, was much younger and seemingly an unlikely match for the season's star. The photos were damning, but there were no official statements. No one knew for sure what was going on behind the scenes. But for those close to the couple, the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Behind closed doors, the tension had been palpable for months. His behavior had changed. The once loving husband seemed increasingly distant, his affection waning as he slipped deeper into a world of Hollywood temptations. The wife, while outwardly composed, began to notice the signs. At first, she tried to brush it off, convincing herself it was nothing more than stress from their hectic schedules. But the late-night absences, the unexplained phone calls, and the whispers in the media told a different story. The affair was not just a betrayal of trust, it was the beginning of a series of events that would unravel everything they had worked so hard to build. The wife was devastated. Not only was she facing the reality of a broken marriage, but she was also dealing with the public fallout, the endless questions, the cruel headlines, and the weight of being known as the cheated-on wife of a beloved star. In the face of mounting pressure, the Winklers tried to present a united front, They appeared at charity events, sat for interviews, and even gave joint statements in an attempt to quell the rumors. But everyone could see the cracks in their smiles, the forced laughter, the coldness between them. It was clear that the damage had already been done. The affair, while hidden from the public for a time, would ultimately serve as the first of many shocking secrets to come. And it wouldn't be the last time the world would question what was truly happening in the Winklers' world. So, we already know things weren't exactly going smoothly after the affair. But it wasn't just the infidelity that was driving a wedge between the Winklers. There were other issues brewing in their marriage that no one was really talking about. Take their daughter, for instance. She was in her teens, and, like many teenagers, she was starting to push against the pressure of being the perfect daughter to two of Hollywood's biggest stars. She wanted to break free, to live her own life without being constantly followed by cameras or whispered about in tabloids. And honestly, who could blame her? But for the Winklers, this was a nightmare. They had spent years building the perfect family image, and now their daughter was making that a little bit harder to maintain. One night, after their daughter had posted some pictures from a party, pictures that were now all over the internet, the husband and wife were sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. The tension was thick. "You need to talk to her," the husband said, his voice tense as he pushed his plate away. "She's out of control." "She's a teenager," the wife replied, trying to keep her tone calm. "She's going through a phase. We don't need to make a big deal out of it." "A phase?" he shot back. "This isn't some phase. She's acting out, and it's not helping our image. You've seen the headlines. We can't control her every move. She's not a doll we can dress up and show off," the wife replied, crossing her arms. "She's growing up, and we need to let her make her own decisions." "Well, it's easier for you to say that when your career is still on the rise," he muttered, bitterness creeping into his voice. She looked up sharply, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't back down. "It means while you're out there getting accolades and awards, I'm getting passed over for every role. And now, our daughter's giving us a bad name. You've got to see how this looks, right? To the public? To our fans?" She sighed, feeling the weight of everything pulling at her. "I can't be everything to everyone, and neither can she. Maybe it's time we stop pretending we have it all together." The silence between them was deafening for a moment, before he spoke again, softer this time. I can't do this anymore. You're always so busy, so focused on your career. It feels like you don't even see what's happening at home." "Because I'm supposed to just sit back and fade into the background," she snapped, frustration leaking into her voice. "I've worked hard for this, for my career. You knew what you were getting into when we got together." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. "I didn't sign up to be ignored. I didn't sign up to watch you shine while I fade." The pain in his voice stung her. She knew he was right. There was something there, a gap between them that had been widening for years. She could feel it too. But her own ambition, her own dreams, they were hard to set aside. "Maybe we need to go to therapy," she suggested after a long pause, her voice quiet, almost defeated. He shook his head. "Therapy won't fix what's broken between us. I don't even know if we can fix it anymore." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. They were two people who had once loved each other deeply, but now they were two strangers, both hurt and resentful, trapped in a marriage that no longer felt like a partnership. The dream they had built together was crumbling, piece by piece. It wasn't just their daughter who was causing tension. It was everything. Their careers, their differences, their inability to communicate. The power struggle between them had been there from the start, but now it felt impossible to ignore. "You've changed," he muttered almost under his breath, though she heard him clearly. "And you haven't," she shot back, the words sharp, the anger and hurt seeping through. "You've turned into someone I don't even recognize." He stood up abruptly, slamming his hand on the table. "I'm trying, but you're not here anymore. Not for me, not for us." She swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears. "I don't know how we got here. I really don't." "I don't either," he said quietly, "but I don't know if we can go back." And with that, the conversation was over, leaving nothing but the sound of their heavy breathing in the empty room. There was no easy way out of this. The marriage that had once seemed unbreakable was now fragile, its foundation cracked beyond repair. And yet, they both knew, no matter how much they fought, no matter how far they drifted from each other, the public would never know the full truth. To the outside world, they were still the perfect couple. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. The tabloids were in full swing. Every move the Winklers made was scrutinized, every photograph dissected, and every word they said twisted into something more than it was. The media's obsession with their marriage wasn't just a passing interest, it was a full-on frenzy, feeding on the cracks that had started to show. They could no longer escape the spotlight no matter how hard they tried. One morning, after another set of photos surfaced showing the husband in a questionable situation with a younger woman, the wife was pacing in their living room, phone pressed to her ear. She had seen the headlines before they even hit the stands, and she knew exactly what the public would say. The media was already having a field day, painting her as the betrayed wife, a woman living in the shadow of her husband's infidelities. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How is this still happening? I thought we agreed to keep it together." "I didn't do anything," he responded from the other end of the line. His voice was defensive, almost too defensive. "I told you it's not what it looks like." "Oh, please, it's exactly what it looks like." She slammed the phone down on the counter, her hand shaking. "They're going to eat us alive, and we're supposed to act like everything's fine?" The husband walked into the room, looking worn out, as if the last few weeks had aged him years. "Look, we can't control what they write. We've been through this before. It's not just about what they write, it's about how they twist everything," she shot back, her eyes narrowing. "I don't even recognize us anymore, and I'm sure the public doesn't either." She turned away from him, frustration bubbling to the surface. "This whole thing is getting out of hand. The more we try to act like everything's normal, the worse it gets." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What do you want me to do? Go on TV and beg for forgiveness? That's not who I am." "I didn't ask you to do that," she snapped, spinning around to face him again. "But maybe we should start being honest with ourselves, and with them. We can't keep pretending we're something we're not." For a moment, there was silence. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. She looked exhausted, like she was carrying the weight of their entire public life on her shoulders. She had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together. But now she was breaking under the pressure. "I don't know what you want anymore," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know either," she replied, her voice cracking. "But I can't keep living like this, trying to hold it all together while you do whatever it is you're doing." The tension between them hung thick in the air, like a storm waiting to break. The truth was, they didn't know what they were anymore. The public saw them as a power couple, a pair of stars with the perfect life, but behind closed doors, they were falling apart. Their marriage wasn't just struggling, it was suffocating under the weight of their own expectations. And it wasn't just the public that was taking its toll. The constant media coverage, the paparazzi lurking at every corner, the relentless questions from journalists, everything was spiraling out of control. Every appearance they made, every interview they gave, felt like a performance. The smiles they put on were fake, their answers rehearsed. But the public was hungry for more. They wanted drama, they wanted scandal, and the Winklers were more than happy to give it to them. "You know they're going to keep coming after us," he said after a long pause. "We can't escape them." "Then why are we even trying?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and resignation. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending. Maybe it's time we admit we're not the perfect couple they think we are." He stood still, staring at her as if considering her words for the first time. "You want to tell them the truth?" His voice was low, almost mocking. You want to tell the world everything? About me? About you? No, she said, shaking her head. I don't want to tell the world anything. I just want to stop living this lie. The media had been their biggest enemy from the start, but now it felt like their only choice was to stop fighting the inevitable. No matter how much they tried to keep their personal lives private, the world was already too deep into their story. And with every new headline, every fresh scandal, the couple's carefully crafted public image was being shattered piece by piece. Their marriage, once an icon of Hollywood perfection, was now a spectacle for the world to watch. And the truth was, no one knew what was going to happen next. The media storm surrounding the Winklers had reached its peak. The public's obsession with their marriage was no longer just curiosity, it was a full-on frenzy. Every tabloid headline was a new revelation. Every photograph captured a new moment of betrayal or heartbreak. But the worst was yet to come. What no one knew, what they'd managed to keep hidden, was the darkest secret of all. It started with a whisper, a name, passed from one gossip column to the next. No one knew who she was at first, just that the husband had been seen with her on more than one occasion. But as the weeks went by, the name became more familiar. Vanessa, a younger actress, someone with her own rising career but not nearly as famous as the Winklers. Still, the media latched onto the story, and soon it was all anyone could talk about. But that wasn't the real betrayal. That wasn't the thing that would shatter the marriage beyond repair. It was a phone call. Late one night, the wife was sitting in the study trying to finish up some work and ignore the constant media pressure. Her phone buzzed on the desk, an unknown number flashing on the screen. She almost didn't answer it, but something in her gut told her she should. Maybe it was the sheer exhaustion, the constant feeling of being on edge, but she picked it up. "Hello," she said, her voice wary. There was a brief pause before a voice on the other end responded. "It's me. I need to tell you something. Something you don't know." It was a woman's voice, one she didn't recognize at first. Her heart began to race, but she stayed calm. "Who is this?" "It's Vanessa," the voice said, and everything inside her went cold. This isn't easy, but you need to know the truth." The wife stood up from the desk, her hands trembling. "What do you mean? What truth?" "I never wanted to hurt you," Vanessa said quickly, "but I can't keep this secret any longer. I need you to know that your husband wasn't just seeing me. He's been seeing me for a lot longer than you think." The wife's mind raced, and she sank back into the chair, her stomach flipping. This was bad, worse than she could have imagined. "I've been with him for over a year," Vanessa continued, her voice cracking. "But there's more. He's the father of my child." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She felt like the room was spinning. She couldn't breathe, couldn't focus. For a moment, she was paralyzed by the revelation. The line went silent for a long moment before the wife managed to choke out, "Are you serious? How could you keep this from me?" "I didn't want this to happen," Vanessa said quickly, "but I had no choice. He promised he'd leave you, that we could be together, but he never did. And now I'm pregnant. I can't keep this to myself anymore. You need to know what's been happening behind your back." The wife sat there in shock, her mind reeling. Her husband had been hiding this from her for over a year. The affair, the lies, the deceit, it was all there, wrapped up in a neat little package. But the fact that he was going to be a father to someone else's child? That was too much to comprehend. When she finally hung up the phone, the weight of the betrayal hit her with full force. The man she had trusted, the man she had loved for so long, had been living a double life. Not only had he been unfaithful, but he had been leading another woman on, promising a future with her while keeping his wife in the dark. Later that night, when he came home, she was already waiting for him, sitting in the dim light of the living room, her eyes burning with fury and heartbreak. He knew something was wrong. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice cold and sharp. He hesitated, his eyes flickering. "I was out with some friends." "What's going on?" She didn't answer him. Instead, she stood up and walked over to where he was standing. For a moment, they just looked at each other. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the way he was trying to avoid her gaze. "I know about Vanessa," she said quietly, her words laced with quiet rage. His face went pale, and he opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. She didn't give him a chance to explain. "I know everything," she continued. "The affair, the lies, and now I know about the baby." The silence that followed was deafening. He stood frozen, unable to speak, as the weight of her words hit him like a sledgehammer. There was no denying it now. The truth was out, and there was no way to take it back. "You—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "How could you do this to me? To us?" He reached out as if to touch her, but she stepped back, her eyes full of pain. Don't touch me." I didn't mean for this to happen," he stammered, his voice breaking. "It was a mistake, all of it. I never wanted to hurt you." But the wife didn't believe him. How could she? The man she had trusted with her life had betrayed her in the worst possible way. And now, she was left standing in the wreckage of their marriage, the life they had built crumbling around her. "I want a divorce," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "I can't do this anymore." It was the hardest thing she had ever said, but it was the truth. She couldn't stay with him, not after everything. Not after the lies, the cheating, and the baby. And as he stood there, speechless and broken, she walked out of the room, knowing that their marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. Public perception shattered, and a sinister crime. The fallout from the revelation of the affair was swift, but what followed was even darker. As the tabloids plastered every inch of their crumbling marriage across the covers, something far more sinister began to take shape. A crime that no one saw coming. And it wasn't just about the scandalous betrayal anymore, it was about what would happen next. The wife had been living under a microscope, trying to process the unraveling of everything she thought she knew. But as the media buzzed about the affair, a tip came through that would change everything. It started as a simple anonymous message. A cryptic note slipped under her front door. At first, she thought it was another malicious stunt from the paparazzi trying to get a rise out of her. But this message was different. "I know what really happened the night your husband met Vanessa. It wasn't just an affair. You need to know the truth about what he did." The handwriting was shaky, the words typed on a piece of paper that had been folded and slipped into a brown envelope. She stared at the note for a long time, feeling her pulse quicken. Could it be real? Could there be something darker lurking beneath the surface of everything she'd already learned? The wife decided to ignore it at first. Maybe it was a prank, but the idea kept gnawing at her. What if there was more to the affair than she had been told? What if her husband's betrayal wasn't just an emotional one? What if it involved something criminal? She couldn't shake the feeling, so she decided to dig deeper. Using her connections from years in the business, she started looking into the circumstances surrounding the night her husband and Vanessa first met. It didn't take long for her to find something suspicious. The night of their initial meeting, Vanessa had been involved in an incident, an altercation in a club that, according to sources, had led to an arrest for assault. But why hadn't she heard about it? After speaking with a few sources, the pieces began to fall into place. Vanessa had not only been involved with the husband, but she had also been in legal trouble before. What was even more chilling was that the night of the altercation, Vanessa had been seen leaving the scene with a bruised and bloody man. No one knew who the man was, but the whispers suggested it had been a violent encounter that had been covered up. The more the wife dug, the more the investigation led her down a dark path. She learned that the man Vanessa had been seen with that night had been found dead in an alleyway a few days later, the cause of death ruled as blunt force trauma to the head. The authorities had considered it an unfortunate accident, but the timing was too close to her husband's affair to be ignored. Was it possible that there was more to this than just a love triangle? The wife went to the police, hesitant but desperate for answers. She couldn't stand the thought that her husband, the man who had betrayed her, might be involved in something far worse than an affair. She explained the situation, shared the note, and the rumors she had uncovered. After some digging, the police found that the dead man had been an associate of someone from her husband's past, someone with ties to organized crime. The story was beginning to get darker. At this point, the police didn't have enough evidence to connect her husband directly to the crime, but they were looking into it. The wife's stomach twisted with fear. The more she learned, the more it seemed like her husband's world was entangled with something far more dangerous than infidelity. Could he have been involved in something criminal without her knowing? The next few days felt like a blur. The police began to question her husband, but he denied any involvement. He claimed he had no idea who the man was or why Vanessa was connected to this murder. But his alibis were shaky, and the fact that he had kept this hidden from her made everything feel far more suspicious. When the press caught wind of the connection between the crime and her husband, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. The media now wasn't just reporting on a broken marriage. They were reporting on the possible involvement of a beloved Hollywood star in a murder investigation. The world was watching, and every new piece of information made the situation worse. Late one night, the wife found herself alone, scrolling through news articles about the investigation. Her phone rang, and it was her husband. "I need to see you," he said urgently. "We need to talk." She hesitated but agreed, meeting him at the old house they had shared. When she walked in, he was sitting at the kitchen table, looking defeated. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Were you involved in something? Something worse than just the affair?" He didn't respond at first, just stared at her, his eyes full of guilt and fear. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But yes, I knew the man. I knew he was in trouble. Vanessa. She got caught up in something bigger than either of us. But I didn't kill him, I swear." Her heart pounded in her chest. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell the police?" "I didn't know what to do. I didn't want you involved in this." "I thought it would blow over," he said, his voice low. "But I made a mistake. A big one." The wife shook her head. "A mistake? You think you can just make it go away? You think I can just ignore this? I never wanted any of this. But now, I don't know how we're going to get out of it," he said, his voice cracking. She turned away, her mind reeling. The affair, the baby, it was one thing. But now, this was something else entirely. She had been betrayed by the man she loved, not only with his infidelity but with his involvement in something dangerous, something criminal. And as the investigation continued, the couple was no longer just dealing with their personal issues. They were facing the very real possibility of a criminal case that could destroy both of their lives. The husband, once a celebrated Hollywood star, now faced charges of being complicit in the murder of the man connected to Vanessa. Though he hadn't been directly involved in the killing, the police were certain that his ties to the underground world of organized crime and his ongoing relationship with Vanessa had played a role in the man's death. The press, of course, had a field day with it, portraying him as a guilty party, using his past to paint a picture of a man who had led a double life. One of fame and wealth on the surface, but criminal dealings lurking beneath. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted one evening, his voice shaking. He sat across from the wife, looking utterly defeated. "I never wanted any of this. I never wanted to drag you into this mess." She stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Could she forgive him for everything? The affair, the lies, the secrets, but most of all, for involving her in something so dangerous, something so criminal? "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," she replied, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "You've lied to me for years, not just about the affair, but about things that are bigger than us, things that could destroy both of us. And I don't even know if you're telling me the full truth now. I swear I am. I never meant for this to happen, he said, his voice desperate. I thought I could control it. I thought I could keep you safe. But you didn't, she shot back, tears starting to form in her eyes. You kept lying. You kept making decisions that only hurt us, only made things worse. You didn't just betray me. You put my life in danger, too. The silence between them was thick, and neither knew how to bridge the gap that had grown between them. He had hoped, despite everything, that they could find their way back to each other. But the truth was that no matter how much he apologized, no matter how many promises he made, the damage had already been done. As the investigation into the murder continued, things became even more complicated. Vanessa, the woman at the center of it all, had disappeared. The police were searching for her, but she was nowhere to be found. The wife, though still reeling from the betrayal, found herself almost relieved by Vanessa's disappearance. But it also raised more questions. Was Vanessa involved in something far worse than anyone had realized? Was there more to this crime than just a love affair gone wrong? I need to find her, the wife said, more to herself than to him. If she's the key to all this, I have to know where she is. I have to know what really happened. You don't need to get involved in this anymore, he pleaded. This is my mess, not yours. But she knew that wasn't true. She had always been the strong one in their relationship, the one who had kept everything together, even when it seemed impossible. Now, though, she found herself questioning everything. Could she walk away from him and the life they had built together? Could she really cut ties with the man she had once loved, who was now entangled in something so dark and dangerous? The truth was, she didn't know. Every part of her wanted to move on, to walk away from the chaos and pain. But another part of her, something deep inside, wasn't ready to let go of the man she had once married. There was still a part of her that wanted to believe in redemption, in forgiveness. I have to know the truth, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. I have to know what really happened, who was involved, and why. I can't just sit back and let everything fall apart. He looked at her, his eyes full of pain and regret. I understand, but just know, no matter what happens, I'll always be here. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I will do whatever it takes to make things right. It was the first time he had spoken without an agenda, without trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. She could hear the sincerity in his voice, and for a moment she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them. But it was a slim one. The damage was immense, and the truth was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. As the wife continued to investigate, seeking the truth about Vanessa and the deadly crime that had now consumed their lives, she couldn't shake the feeling that something far darker was still out there, something that no one had uncovered yet. And as much as she wanted to walk away, to leave the past behind, she knew that her journey wasn't over. Not yet. For better or for worse, their lives were still tied together by the secrets they had shared, and the ones they had yet to discover. The search for the truth had consumed the wife, pulling her deeper into a world she never wanted to be part of. Every day, it seemed like new revelations came to light, each more devastating than the last. The investigation had taken on a life of its own, and it seemed like everyone in their circle, friends, colleagues, even family, had something to say about the scandal. But the more she dug, the more she realized that the truth was far darker than she could have imagined. Vanessa's disappearance wasn't just a coincidence. It had been a carefully orchestrated escape. And the man her husband had been involved with, the one whose murder had been covered up, had a history with people much more dangerous than anyone had realized. The wife had taken a step back from the public eye, retreating from the media frenzy that had once consumed her every move. But there was still something gnawing at her, an instinct that told her there was one final piece of the puzzle that needed to be uncovered. Vanessa wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Her husband had hidden far more than just an affair. She knew the only way to truly get to the bottom of it was to confront him one last time. She had to hear him admit everything: the affair, the murder, and most of all, the betrayal that had torn them apart. She couldn't move on without it. Not without closure. The meeting took place in a small, quiet cafe away from prying eyes. Her husband, looking weary and defeated, sat across from her. His once confident demeanor had long since disappeared, replaced with a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice calm but full of emotion. She didn't want to go through the motions of pretending they could work this out. She needed answers. She needed the truth. He looked at her for a long moment, and then, with a deep sigh, he nodded. "It's over. I know I've hurt you, and I've hurt myself. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know, I never wanted any of this." "That's not good enough anymore," she replied, her tone firm. "You've lied, manipulated, and pulled me into a web of lies that's left me questioning everything I thought I knew about you. About us. I need you to tell me the whole truth. Everything." He hesitated, his eyes searching hers for any sign that she might still care. There was none. The woman sitting across from him was different from the one he had once known. She had changed, and so had he. The truth, however, had remained the same. Vanessa. "She wasn't just an affair," he began, his voice low. "She was tied to things I didn't want you to know about. She got involved with some dangerous people I thought I could get away from. But I couldn't. And when the man, her associate, was found dead, I tried to distance myself. I didn't want you to get involved. I never wanted you to know that world. But you did," she said softly. "You brought it all into our lives. You lied about it. You kept me in the dark because you didn't trust me enough to handle it." "I didn't trust myself," he replied quietly. "I didn't think I could get out of it. I wanted to keep you safe, but the more I tried to protect you, the more I pushed you away." Her eyes narrowed. "But what about the murder? Was it all just a cover-up?" "I didn't kill him," he said quickly, shaking his head. "I wasn't involved in the death itself, but I knew who was, and I was scared. I thought if I kept my distance, if I stayed quiet, I could protect you. And me." She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who was involved?" "Who killed him?" He stared at her for a long moment, the guilt weighing on him like a heavy chain. Finally, he spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "Vanessa. She didn't just disappear on her own. She ran. She ran because the people she was working with were connected to the murder. The man who died, he was blackmailing her. But in the end, it was her that took him down." Her mind reeled as the pieces fell into place. Vanessa wasn't just a woman caught in a love affair. She was tangled in a dangerous web of crime. She had killed someone, and her husband had known about it. The truth was far uglier than she had imagined. "So you were involved in a cover-up?" she asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. "You were hiding the truth for someone who was part of a murder?" He nodded, his head hanging low. "I didn't know what to do. I was in too deep. I kept thinking I could fix things, that I could keep us safe. But I didn't realize how much danger we were really in." She stood up from the table, her hands trembling. "You kept me in the dark about everything. You lied to me, to everyone. You put your own selfish needs above everything else. I don't even know who you are anymore." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I've made my peace with it. If you can't forgive me, I understand. I don't deserve it." She looked at him, the pain of his betrayal still raw but beginning to shift into something else. "I don't know what happens next, but I know I can't go back to who I was before all of this. You've changed everything." With that, she walked away, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had just learned. Her husband's secrets were now fully exposed, and there was no turning back. As she walked out of the cafe, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be hers to walk, alone, if necessary. The truth had set her free, but it had also shattered everything she had once believed in. For better or for worse, the marriage was over, and the story was far from finished. The fallout from everything that had transpired was far from over. The wife had walked away from her marriage, leaving behind the man she had once loved, the life they had built together, and the toxic web of lies and deception. She had chosen herself, her truth, and her future, one that no longer involved him. But little did she know, her decision to confront the truth would be the spark for an even more shocking twist, one that would change everything she thought she knew about the situation. It all started when she received a phone call late one evening. Her heart sank when she saw the number, an unfamiliar one, but one that felt vaguely ominous. She hesitated for a moment before picking up. "Hello?" she said, her voice steady but filled with anticipation. "It's Vanessa," came the voice on the other end, sharp and clear. For a moment she couldn't speak. Her mind raced. Vanessa. After everything that had happened, she never expected to hear from her again. Not after the police had gone searching for her and her disappearance remained a mystery. Why was she calling now? "Where are you?" the wife demanded, her voice edged with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "What the hell do you want from me?" Vanessa's laugh was bitter, almost mocking. "I'm not calling for you. I'm calling because I need you to know something. Something that's going to change everything." "What do you mean?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "There's more to this story than your husband has let on. A lot more. And if you're smart, you'll listen to me. You're not going to like what you hear." The wife's mind raced. She had thought she was done with this nightmare. She had thought that confronting her husband had closed the chapter on everything. But now, with Vanessa's words hanging in the air, she wasn't so sure. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "You killed someone. You're involved in a crime. Don't think for a second that I'm interested in hearing anything from you." "You're not listening," Vanessa said, her voice suddenly low and urgent. "Your husband, he didn't just get involved with me because of the affair. That's not the full story. He knew everything about the murder. He knew the man who was killed. He was part of it. He's been lying to you, but he's hiding something worse." The wife's stomach dropped. She felt the blood drain from her face as Vanessa's words sank in. "You're saying he was involved?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa was silent for a long moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. "You're not as naive as he thinks you are. He was involved with the people who made the murder happen. He thought he could get away with it. But the truth always comes out." The wife's head was spinning. The man she had been married to, the man she had trusted, the man who had lied to her for months, was involved in something much darker than she could have ever imagined. He hadn't just been an unwilling participant in a criminal situation. He had been complicit. He had known about the murder and was connected to the criminals behind it. All of it. The affair, the cover-up, the web of lies. It had been just a small part of something far more sinister. "I'm done with him," she said, her voice firm. "I'm done with all of this." "You don't get it, do you?" Vanessa said sharply. "You're not done. Because now that you know the truth, they're coming for you too. You're tied to this now. You can't walk away from this." The wife froze, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" "I'm saying you've got a target on your back. Because now, they know you're the only one who knows the truth about what really happened. You're a liability, and they're not going to let you walk away." Suddenly, it all hit her like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just facing the wreckage of her marriage. She wasn't just a betrayed wife trying to rebuild her life. She was in danger. The people who had been involved in the murder, the people who had manipulated her husband, were now watching her. She was caught in a deadly game that she hadn't even realized she was playing. "Where are you?" she demanded. "Where are you hiding?" "I'm not hiding," Vanessa said bitterly. "I'm just trying to survive. You should do the same." And with that, the line went dead. The days following Vanessa's call were a blur of panic and confusion. The wife's mind raced as she tried to piece together the final pieces of the puzzle. The revelation that her husband was complicit in the murder had shattered the last of her illusions. No longer was this just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of everything she had believed about the man she had married. She didn't have much time to process it. As Vanessa had warned, the people behind the crime weren't just going to let her walk away. The danger was real, and the wife knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. But she wasn't going to go down quietly. She had lived in the shadow of lies long enough. With the help of the police, she began to piece together her husband's role in the criminal network. They learned that he had been entangled with organized crime for years, hiding behind his public persona. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her survival. With her knowledge of the murder and her husband's involvement, she had become a liability to the very people who had orchestrated everything. They wouldn't stop until she was silenced, but the wife was determined. She couldn't undo the past, but she could control what came next. In the following weeks, she went into hiding, her life and identity erased from public view. She severed all ties with her husband and anyone who might still be connected to the crime. It wasn't easy, leaving behind her career, her friends, and even her family, but she knew it was the only way to stay alive. Her husband's career was officially over. The scandal surrounding the affair had been enough to bring him down, but it was the police investigation into the murder and his ties to organized crime that finished him off. He was arrested, tried for his involvement in the crime, and sentenced to a long prison term. Vanessa, too, was eventually found, arrested, and brought into the fold of the investigation, revealing the full extent of her involvement. For the wife, there was no victory. There was no moment of triumph where she could reclaim her life as it had once been. She was scarred by the betrayals, not just by the affair, but by the devastating truth that her life had been built on a foundation of lies and crime. She didn't seek revenge, but in the end, the law had caught up with everyone involved, and she had done what she could to ensure that the truth was heard, no matter the cost. Months later, she sat quietly in a new place, a different life, far removed from the chaos of her past. She had no desire to return to the spotlight, to rebuild what had been destroyed. She was simply trying to heal, to find peace in the silence. Her story became a cautionary tale, one of love lost, trust shattered, and the dark secrets that hide behind the facades of the rich and famous. The truth had set her free, but it had also forever altered the course of her life. She had fought for herself, for her survival, and in the end, she was no longer the woman she had been. She had emerged from the wreckage, broken but alive, and that, in itself, was victory. Thanks for watching Beneath the Surface, the dark side of crime. If you've been as shocked as we have by the revelations in today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden truths behind some of the most infamous cases. What do you think about the Winkler marriage? Did they deserve a second chance, or was it always doomed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to check out our other videos for more jaw-dropping stories. Until next time, stay curious. And remember, the truth is often darker than it seems.